Hello, and welcome to Inflection Point Conversations. I'm Michelle Obeda, an art director and 3D artist. In this podcast series, I'll be interviewing experts in the fields of art, architecture, and visualization. Together, we will take a deep dive into the disruptive topics that have reached an inflection point in our industry. If you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe. You can also comment and give feedback. I'd love to reach more people and grow this amazing community. Today I'm talking with Benji Connell. Benji Connell is an Irish architectural illustrator who trained in architecture both in Queen's University Belfast and at the Glasgow School of Art. He's the director of Concrete Clouds, one of the leading illustration studios in architecture. His work at Concrete Clouds is defined by an eye for character and detail. He helps to tell the story of architectural and design projects by providing drawings that are stylistically and narratively tailored for each design stage. He has had work exhibited globally in galleries from Sao Paulo to Venice. Welcome, Benji.
Oh, thanks, Michelle.
It's
Thank you.
great to have you here. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for joining.
Cheers, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to ask you about your illustrations. So I'll put a link up here for anyone who hasn't seen them before. But they're very stylized and exciting and kind of different to a lot of things that I've seen that people generally see, which is really cool. So I'd love to start by asking you. So you studied architecture in Belfast and Glasgow. What got you interested in architecture in the first place?
I think mainly for me growing up, I was always fascinated and in love with films, and especially the sets in films. My dad, he's actually a lawyer, so he's a barrister. He's a completely different background, but that was the one thing that he really brought to the table, just in terms of influence. As I was growing up, he used to show me and my brother all sorts of films from a very, very young age, probably inappropriately young at times. But I really became obsessed with set design, and like as far back as I can remember, like I remember being 4 years old maybe and getting gold and black VHS box set of Star Wars, the original trilogy, and just that was
Mhm.
it was everything to me. So I guess I didn't really understand why it was I liked certain aesthetics and things at that time. But as the years went by, it sort of dawned on me that I was being drawn to the sense of like world building and scale,
Yeah.
and sort of complexity in these films. So I really just went down different tangents and rabbit holes. Um, even if something wasn't immediately obvious as something very architectural, just like films that are maybe more intimate in terms of like conversation and stuff. It just sort of started to click to me that like that's what to me that's what architecture is. It's just a
Yeah.
sort of everything that comes together to just um to create like to create everyday life, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it really was just film that got me into like design and art, and then architecture as I got older just seemed like the most obvious thing to do. Um,
Yeah.
although I did have a tangent into law initially.
Oh,
I
you
actually,
did? Oh.
yeah, I actually went to Glasgow University initially to study law, but it was very
Mhm.
clear immediately that that was not the right move for me. And then
Right.
I dropped out within 2 months or something, and then had a year off and went traveling and did the sort of cliche find myself. And but I knew I was going to go into just just go back to Belfast to Queens and started study architecture. So really,
So you
that
did
was
part, did you do part one there in
yeah.
Belfast?
I did my
Mhm.
part one, so I did all 3 years of undergrad, and then I had 2 years out in London working in practice, and then that's when I decided to like have a redemption arc for Glasgow and go back. And then luckily I got into the School of Art there, and it was great just to have the two different
Yeah.
experiences.
Did you do a master in illustrations or did you do part two architecture?
I did part two architecture,
Mhm.
but I knew in university when firstly I worked in practice in London on my second year for BDP, and I had a scholarship that they offered to go back, so I knew I had my job secure, and
Yeah.
these are like a lot of the encouragement to actually draw professionally came from. So I just kind of went back to Glasgow with that in mind, and knew that I should just really go for it and do what I want. And I had one fit in the idea of, like, maybe having an architectural traditional path of a career, or maybe another fit in the potential to work in film and things like that. So like in art
Yeah.
department stuff. So that's kind of uh, really it's all kind of led to where I am now. But yeah,
Yeah, I always think that architecture, I mean, I've thought this because I myself studied architecture and then I went into various, I mean, now I've got, and then I came back into architectural visualization. But I think it's a really good base design degree to sort of go and do something artistic from.
yeah,
Um, it's a really, so, but have you always loved drawing and sketching?
yeah. I mean, just again, as long as I can remember, just always drawing. Like, funny at Christmas last year, or like in 2023, we had all our old home videos on old VHSs, and I was convinced all the good stuff was on there, and I got them all processed because I've just had a child 4 weeks ago. It was nice to see us as kids, like, and remind everyone what it was like. But in those videos, you can see that, like, from 3 or 8, I don't like, as early as I could hold a crayon, I was drawing and coloring
Oh,
it. Just even when you like look back, as sad as it is, like, if you if you look back on your, like, in Northern Ireland, it's P1 to P7 for primary school. If you look back at my
mm.
P1 reports, it's all like, Benji, he loves drawing, and like it's all about like the art and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think as long as I can remember, it's just been something I relax, and I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, congratulations on your newborn. I think you know what all of your friends and family are gonna get gifts, crayons and pens, pencils. They're
Yeah,
gonna be like, he's an artist.
no, that's great. That's great.
Who would you say some of your artistic influences were or are?
Yeah, I mean, I think mainly it's always been like people in film, or like graphic novel
Mhm.
writers and like artists. So a lot of stuff. Like, I love stuff with detail. But the earliest drawings that really hit for me were, I used to be really in love with this series of books called the Edge Chronicles. And the illustrator's Chris Riddell from
Mhm.
England. Who actually gave us a talk whilst I was at the School of Art, which was amazing just to see, because he was drawing like while speaking and stuff. But his drawings are, I mean, if I look at them now and look at some of the stuff I've done, like even some of the weirder stuff outside of my kind of concrete clouds work with architects, it's very clear that there's a thread of influence. It's just so detailed, and like there's so much life and character and ambition to, like, the scope and sense of scale of the world of the Edge Chronicles.
Mhm.
That was like a very early influence. But then like artists like Jeff Darrow or Mobius, like all like Jeff Darrow worked on the concept art for the Matrix, and
Mhm.
Mobius is just the color palettes. It's just such lovely, clean, but very often quite detailed drawings, but such like nice, clean, flat colors. I love all that stuff. And then like Ralph McQuarrie from the Star Wars conceptual artist was just like his paintings, which I got to see them in real life once in London at an exhibition, and they're all very, like, surprisingly small, but they're just incredible with the sense of place, and and then how that's translated into an entire aesthetic for pretty much everything, even outside of Star Wars, in the world of like sci-fi and film and stuff. It's
Yeah.
incredible. Um,
Yeah.
it's always been like, I guess, never strictly architecture. Within architecture, I got really into Lebbeus Woods, or Lebius Woods, and his writings, and all crazy drawings that he did. So that's when I started to realize that there was this maybe more like theoretical, out there kind of thinking within architecture that's maybe more based on the paper design kind of thinking, or like archigram and people like that. That's,
Mhm.
um, but all that thrown into like a cauldron of weirdness is sort of where I come from when I'm
Yeah. Yeah,
doing
yeah,
things.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, definitely it does. I remember because I studied architecture and something that I was always really interested in was graphic novels and comics and drawing cartoons and comics. And then I got into video games, and I was thinking that these are sort of quite different, but actually there's so much thread drawn between them. And I've met other people who have gone from architecture to illustration, comic style. And
Yeah.
I think that there's a way to draw architecture. Actually, I was going to ask you, like, your illustrations have a kind of comic feel, and is that intentional, or is that like a style that you've come up with, or is it just your style of drawing that you found?
I think it's just over time it's become like just naturally what I'm gravitating towards, or it's developed. Like if I go back to my earliest drawings in architecture, like that I was sort of doing professionally in practice, they're so like rudimentary.
Mm,
To see the progress over like the last decade, since I kind of went off into practice as a part one assistant or whatever, and even then I was like making sure I pigeonholed myself into that corner because I just wanted to do that. That's how I related to the sort of world of architecture, to be able to kind of communicate design in that way. But I think just as I got more confidence and more confidence behind every line, like you start to draw just with real purpose, and you develop this vocabulary of like architectural language in your head, like almost like a shorthand to just kind of very quickly and efficiently get the point of the brief that you're given, because you're often given these very like all over the place briefs that and they're very much work in progress a lot of the time, and there may not actually be very much design. It's just a lot of it could be this, could be that. Here's some stuff that we think, so you have to just kind of distill all that information quickly. And I think that has, in some ways it had to like have, because everything else is kind of unfocused, you have to have a focus, and
yeah,
it's developed into this style. But because of the sort of love of comics and stuff, my intention is to always bring as much joy and vibrancy and life and character to these things, because as I say, like a lot of the projects just are very, very early stage design, and you can turn something that's just not sort of ready, or like if that's a competition stage or for a public consultation or planning, whatever it is, you can just throw so much into the mix in terms of turning like a space that someone modeled up very quickly in the computer or whatever it is into like somewhere that does actually feel like a potential place and like a
mhm,
potential reality. And I think there's such a there's just a softer um, kind of thing happening with drawings that you
yeah,
don't get. I feel in maybe more like rigid CGI imagery. A lot of
yeah,
find over the years is that even clients or just the public will look at a CGI and it looks like a photo to someone who may not be in the know, and then they're like, "Oh, is that it? Like, is it's kind of like, I guess that's it, it's done." Whereas
oh, I see, yeah,
there's just much more imagination that anyone kind of, I feel, brings into looking at a drawing, because I think everyone just kind of, or most people enjoy like a nice drawing. At least you can kind of get lost in it and imagine maybe more what a potential place could be like. So the comic feel, really helps to bring that kind of sense of storytelling and narrative into a drawing, so that everyone is doing something. Like, in my head when I'm doing it, I'm creating little stories of like what these people's lives might be like, just to keep it
yeah,
interesting stuff. Because if you're drawing this stuff all the time, and often the projects are similar, like it's fun to just come up with all of that, so that I never want to use the same people or anything again in any image. Everything's different, and every composition offers an opportunity to tell a different story, even
yeah.
within the same project. So I just that just keeps it interesting for me. Instead of ever being stock, because you know it's probably I guess I can be critical about some of the imagery that I've seen over the years. It just to me it is stock. Like it's not. It's all the same, and you always got the same.
It doesn't have personality.
Yeah, like especially
Yeah,
a lot of vendors will have the same people, like in student projects, and then in practice, there's the same kind of cutouts that have been taken
because
from the
they've just bought a pack, and
yeah.
they've gone with that pack. We did, yeah. I feel like every studio has like runs that risk of being limited with their like the stock
Absolutely.
pack that they bought. Yeah,
And then
So in
it's
ter-
a joke that people, you'd always have the same character who would appear in every project around the world. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's really
I
traveled.
recognize. Yeah, for sure. I recognize them. So in terms of like comparing this to comics, comics are like sequential rather than cartoons. So is there an intention also that your illustrations can be read in sequence to tell a story? Or is that it, not
Yeah,
necessarily?
it depends on the project, but yeah, like often, like if you're working on like a larger scale master plan where there's no overall aerial, so you're getting like wider context, and then there may be like more zoomed in like cutaway aerials and axonometric kind of things. Um, that kind of forms like a larger view like framework to showcase a project, but then the viewpoints are often taken, like around that, to tell the journey, the story of a journey into a site and how you might navigate somewhere like new. So definitely like they not that there's like, they may be in a particular order, but it's at the same time it's like they could be read in any order, because I suppose you can sort of start to place yourself and imagine like, if I go from here, then I would end up in that drawing and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're going into this world and taking a snapshot photo of these things and then imagining what is that going to look like and feel like at any point that you set yourself down and imagine like, this is one of the sort of those moments that I want to capture.
Yes, like a journey through the space.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and in terms of your process, do you work off, drawings like plans and sections, like elevations, or do you receive a model? Do you start from a 3D model at all?
It all really varies. Like, yeah, there's it could be a 3D model. It could be something that's more developed, further along, like a full Revit model or something. Sorry, or it could be just like a SketchUp model that is literally massing blocks that have been pulled up, like as rudimentary as you can get. Or it can be from a Google Street View, where I'll take the context that is there, and maybe there's an infill site that I'll fill in by myself, like by eye, or maybe the client will like Photoshop in just very roughly like where the massing should sit. Like, I tend to always
Mm,
get clients to, when they get, like, I always get the information given to me as much as possible in terms of them selecting the view, so there's just no kind of discrepancies. But like, yeah, it can be anything. It's just even I've had an occasion when clients who may not actually be from strictly architectural backgrounds and don't have access to like even SketchUp, even if I have a really like scribbly plan on like literally a squiggly
hmm.
sketch,
Yeah.
I can bring that into you know my iPad and then draw over it slightly more like proper lines, and then I could bring that into SketchUp and then pull those blocks up just to then set a camera for myself to have a view. So as long as I have an eye level perspective with stuff to look at, I'll be able to
Yes.
imagine something. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And your illustrations, they're all very stylized and looks like you've sort of developed a style. Do you feel do you feel constrained to stay within that style as part of your brand, or do you feel like you can let your style develop over time? What have you
Uh,
found?
I guess it's definitely something I've thought about over the years. Like, I can, I like that it's developed into something that's recognizably, hopefully, my style. And
Hmm.
I'm consistent with line weights and color choices, especially to sort of to keep that consistency. But in terms of like the amount of stuff going on, or I'm always trying to push the drawings further and further, especially when I'm given something that could open the door to me kind of letting loose. And
Hmm.
I always sort of start any job with a client with kind of, get, is warning them the right word, but basically like to tell them that
Yeah.
I will do a lot. So often my approach is do it all, and I'll
Hmm.
imagine to the nth degree the amount of detail, because it's easier then for me to strip it back. Like
Right.
instead of like, so if there's loads and loads and loads of people and loads of things going on, it's better, I find, to just do that and then be like, okay, take out that's overkill, or the you take
Yeah.
composition. But I just I like turning something that's so, like, because it's always terrifying looking at a blank canvas or like a massing model. It looks like nothing, but
Yeah.
I'm quite quick at everything. So every drawing, if it's an eye level, it's only like a day ever that I work on it. It's from whenever I start going in the morning or whatever it is, by the end of the day it'll be done. Like, it'll be drawn. So it's cool to like see something just kind of emerge over the
Yeah.
course of the day, and then at the end of the day be like, that's done. And if you're on something that has 5 or 6 views over the course of a week, it's amazing to go from like Monday to Friday and then all of a sudden have this entire um package that's like been imagined. And I think that's really the benefit of like what I do, because clients and architects can just give me the stuff and then trust that by the end of the week they're going to have something that's totally visualized, especially in a case where they don't have any visuals at all or anything to any real sense of design other than maybe sketches of master plans and a lot of precedent information and all the feasibility work that goes into setting up early stage strategies or project. I can
Yeah.
sort of take the reins on collaboratively working with them to just communicate all the design at an early stage, so that there's a lot more to talk about in terms of like progressing a project forward through
Yeah.
the various design stages, especially early on. So yeah,
Yeah. And do you work completely digital,
yeah.
or
I
do
mean,
you do like kind of ink on paper?
I pretty much work completely digitally now. And in
Yeah.
practice, I used to draw everything by hand still. Like, so when I was working in London, like, I would be drawing with my black pen, but like, it would the process was always it was the same as what it is now, but all that base imagery and models and stuff would be underlays that I would print out and you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
sellotape down to the table or masking tape down, and then have trace, and then that process of back and forth of amending designs and erasing things was all just back and forth from the scanner, and then I would color it digitally. But then
Mm.
once I got like an iPad, it was just a Procreate. It was kind of just game over for that, and I
Right.
always refer to Procreate as like removing the middleman of like the need for that
Yeah. Yeah.
process of having so much tracing paper. Like, because if you had to make a design change, you would have to. I would like print it out at a lower opacity, draw over the change, and then put it back into Photoshop and change all the thresholds of the line weights and things
Yeah.
to make all the old drawing disappear and bring out like this new
Yeah.
part, and then patch it in. And I would always call them like patches and patch them. You
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
drawing together in a sense.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I kind of wonder whether it's just a lot easier to make, because I know with visualization, and I think probably similar with the illustration that you do, you you have to work in such a way that you can make amendments because designs develop. And so I suppose it's I know that people do it and they kind of like with hand sketching you can erase, but with pen it's more difficult. And to do iterations, I think you know like software like Procreate and stuff like
yeah,
that have modeled ink and paint really well, I guess is like it gives you that freedom.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, it's quite a intuitive process, really. And but again, that's why I have in terms of like having a consistent style or look, it's because I've set up pens that I've named my own way, like in funny names that
Okay.
certain line weights or just colors the same palette. So I know that it just helps the process, because I'm kind of creatively in control of these choices.
Hmm.
It's only when someone comes to me and says that they're looking for something more like one thing or the other. But generally speaking, like, most people are pretty much, it seems, coming to me to do my thing, I guess. And I'm more like, I'm very like open and like accommodating, I guess, to try new things and push myself maybe in directions that I didn't necessarily think I would do. But out of that
Hmm.
often comes like new like tricks within your own kind of working process that could propel you forward. And there's been a number of those along the way that have kind of, that continue to push you further,
Yeah.
like an artist. So
Yeah. I don't know if you saw my interview with Dennis Elaine. He's architectural illustrator. So it was like one of the early interviews that I did. And he's been doing it for years and he has this definite style that's recognizable. And I remember asking him the same thing. And I think he says that like that his style has developed. He's been doing it for like, I don't know, maybe like 30 plus years. His style has developed in such a way that if a client asked for something in the style of, if they flicking through the portfolio and it's like, can I get this thing from that you did, 20 years ago? Is it probably not, because I think when your style develops, I wonder whether I think you have to allow an artist to develop their style and not be able to do everything that they've ever done. I mean, do you think that that's maybe the
yeah,
case?
yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like I've had things on my website from, like, especially when I was starting off, and on my own, like drawings that I'd done that were from my time in practice that I had done in pen, like
Mhm.
uh, by hand, on paper and stuff. And there is different look to those, and it's moved away from that. So eventually I removed them from my website because I did find sometimes people were asking for those, and it was kind of like I
Mm.
can't replicate that anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's just not the process I'm working to, and that's a business decision to, because the job has to work. It's a fast moving
Yeah.
thing. I could be
Yeah.
working on something for 2 days with one client, and the next 3 days another client, or just jobs are always just dominoed one after the other,
Yeah.
which is fun, but it just helps to, like, have this tight style, it's just become that now, so it's kind of clear to me. But I do just have to be very, like, I don't know, like, just transparent about, like, this is what it is now.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, in 10 years from now, like, how that's developed even further, because maybe the way I'm working now just won't be that anymore in 10 years. But it's like asking yourself to like, I don't know, copy someone else, because who you are
Yeah.
10 years ago is not who you are now, and you
Yeah.
have no idea how you're going to develop. It might, especially as I get older, I can already feel the pain in my shoulder and stuff. Is it going to be as easy to, like, draw to the
Yeah.
same age and stuff when I'm in my 40s? Maybe not, and maybe that'll affect how my line looks and everything. You just don't know.
Yeah. Do you feel open to new technologies? Like if there are things coming out that could say I could automate this or I can make this easier, do you think that you would be open to allowing them to change your process, or do you feel quite protective of your process?
No, I feel open to, um it's like anything in architecture. The In practice, the toolkit that everyone has to get on board with is constantly changing. So,
Mm.
when I started as part one, it was practices grappling with moving on to Revit, which is still the
Mm.
case. There's many practices in London that are smaller. People take time to catch up and are resistant to change, and I've no doubt that was the case whenever architects completely moved off paper and drawing boards into the likes of AutoCAD and everything. So there's always going to be probably resistance to change. But I do, like, God knows, like, how things are going to change over the next first few decades, and I'm sure we can't
Yeah.
really imagine. And I just see, um, think these things as tools to help, that could help. I mean, to be fair, I couldn't sit here with a straight face and be like, um, I'm so resistant to one thing, something like that, because at the end of the day, the iPad as a tool has totally changed the
Changed.
game for so many artists, and
Yeah.
that's, people who deny that, like, I might not necessarily be able to produce the same level of work, especially in such short amounts of time. So that's, as a business, to be able to keep up with the pace of these projects, it's got to be stuff that can be created quickly and efficiently. If you were sort of laboring over something for weeks, with tracing paper and by hand, which is and I know what that's like. I've worked on drawings that are like A0 size for a month, just like a massive aerial drawings that take a month because
Yeah.
you've got a bare bones rabbit model or whatever it is with no information, printing out hundreds of photos of a place and just literally eyeballing and referencing. That takes
Hmm.
so much time. That's not going to be worth anyone's time, maybe financially from a business point of view, because no one's going to pay you to work on a daily rate for a month on something potentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
for me,
hard to economically make that work.
yeah. So it's from both sides. I think it just works
Yeah.
to be quick, and of course, like lots of tools are possibly going to be a thing. Could
Yeah.
help a process. Like who knows what like certain AI tools might be able to do.
Yeah.
But I also do have concerns about like the impact of that on.
Well, I was just going to ask you, like, what are your thoughts on AI and its impact on illustrators like yourself?
Well, I think primarily, as I said, like I see it as a tool. I don't. So another side to my work is over the last 2 and a bit years, I've been heavily uh, involved and part of the crypto art sort of community
Hmm.
online.
Like
Uh,
NFTs?
yeah, so
Hmm.
that became a huge part of my work over the last 2 years, which was great because creatively I've this completely opposite outlet to architecture, but I'm able to bring a lot of that influence. But especially when I'm talking about influences like sci-fi stuff and all, it's somewhere I can do all that.
Yeah.
But I've seen firsthand in that space the impact of AI art on artists, and the sort of war in factions at the center
Yeah.
of it. And on one hand, you've got concept artists and stuff on film who are sort of having a tough time, understandably, because it's largely in many places removing the need
Their
for
job. Yeah.
you up. But as I've seen artists, people working, NFTs and the sort of crypto art community have created a place over the last few years where it just encouraged so many people who wanted to try their hand at art to get involved, and it sort of uh, it just totally opened up the world of art to so many people, which I think is a really positive thing. And you get lots of you build community, you find your people, you find your sort of tribes, and you're running in new circles. And like for some, I'm working for myself, so I don't have like colleagues. That became like an office
Yeah.
to me where you go into Twitter every day and the same people show up, and you meet all these people from all over the world, which
Hmm.
have different backgrounds and influences and stories, and than what I was maybe exposed to in architecture. And um, I've just seen all these artists who have these amazing histories, like in decades of working as a graphic designer or a painter and traditional backgrounds or digital artists and stuff. But then the wave of AI art came in over like the last year and a half, and it started off really crap, and then it became terrifyingly incredible. So
And
the,
what have you found people saying has happened? Like, is it that they've not been given, not been commissioned as much work because their would-be clients have been using AI, or is it that people are using AI in their style? Because I know that that's a big issue too, right?
yeah, well, both those things, both I mean, yeah, both those things that like people are able to replicate other people.
Yeah.
Um,
So if you
uh,
type in like, this building, we plug in a 3D model and say concrete cloud style
yeah,
image, and it can come up with an image, and it's essentially free and very quick. Yeah. Do you worry about that, or do you think that that might be passing trend? Or I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
well, it seems that the sort of within NFTs, the AI craze has sort of died down because there's such a massive flood of AI art that but it's blurred the line between what is kind of, for want of a better word, real and not, to the
Hmm.
point where like I saw someone comment on art of mine the other day on Twitter, where someone else had posted an NFT of an artwork that I had sold to them at some point.
Mhm.
They posted my art, and someone commented underneath saying, um, "Is this AI? If not, well, like, good job to the artist. This is great," because it was just a very sort of detailed illustration. But to me, that was
Mhm.
quite scary because it's like you're
You
getting the
can't
part where
tell.
yeah, people can't tell and or care, or like people who may be interested in buying art as NFTs just maybe don't care, and
Mm,
that's a bad place to potentially get to. But I do think that that wave has has it has shown itself up to be somewhat of a craze. Like, do I worry about potential AI software being able to, like you said, you can have a model and plug in, give me a Benji kind of concrete clouds thing. You know, at some point, I'm sure that's going to be possible to do with anyone's work, um, and I think AI potentially has, that's one impact it could have on the profession of architecture, to sort of to speed things up and potentially cheapen the process. But I think that I just feel that, and I'm holding out hope in sort of humanity that in terms of like a profession, I don't think it's a good idea to have this kind of race to the bottom mentality for the things that we do. We are
yeah.
professional people, and we've spent so many years to training and having so much passion to do degrees that are tough and that require you to be all in and do the all nighters and take the heat from
Yeah.
the takes and stuff and throughout your training and I would like to hope that it's not something that just the people who make the money decisions on, especially in bigger companies, just decide that they don't need or want all that because they can get things cheaper. It's like that to me that is just a race to the bottom sort of mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's definitely certain industries or certain types of clients who I've found, unfortunately, do the race to the bottom where like this is cheaper, I can get it cheaper, I don't mind who does it.
Yeah,
Which I found a lot in architectural visualizations, particularly within the last 6 months.
yeah,
But I wonder, like, it's interesting this idea of NFTs. I feel like the idea of NFTs and AI art, like let's say Mid-Journey, that's open to everyone, are on different sides because someone who's buying, let's say, your NFT illustration, where they could probably download a cheap preview, but they don't own it. So the idea of the NFT is that they're owning the individual bit of artwork that you've made, right? That's what as far as I understand,
yeah,
that's the point of the NFT.
yeah,
So that person who wants to pay money for that is not getting the value. Like, they know they're getting a knockoff if they were to buy it through like an AI generated piece of art. So like why would they want to, like I feel like if someone wants to buy a really expensive piece of art, it's because they want the thing that the person made. And so
yeah,
therefore they probably won't, my hope is that they won't be happy with an AI generated thing that could be made in a million different ways. But I don't know if that's true, because I feel like that's maybe separate, like from the process of like real estate developers and marketing images and things that are very production style. Like, if it's quicker, it's cheaper, I can get it out, and I
yeah.
don't care who did it. I don't know if they're
Well, I mean, it's it's from the perspective I'm getting from sort of both worlds that I'm involved in. Like, it, in the world of architecture, I hope that it's just a case of, if practices talk about sustainability in terms of whatever that might refer to, in terms of like, shit, aiming for like the lower carbon footprint and stuff and build all that stuff. But if you're talking about sustainability, surely also a massive thing to talk about is sustainability of the practice, the profession itself. And you can't
yeah.
just shoot yourself in the foot and annihilate all the things that have made architects for centuries what they are. That they're craftspeople, they're artists, they're talented people that have a huge breadth of knowledge to design and create, and that's why you hire architects. But I do think the profession as a whole, over like maybe like the last 50 years, has probably diluted itself in many ways. A lot of the traditional roles of the architect have been given away or are now done by different bodies or different grips. So that's
Mm.
maybe part of it.
Do you feel also the illustration part of that is one of those branched off?
Yeah, because
Um,
because that's how I guess that's how I've been able to grow a business because I my love of drawing is what to me is hand in hand with architecture. It's the only
mhm,
way I kind of understood architecture was to see it as drawings. So I used
mhm,
to I just see them as one and the same. So, but because I've been so kind of like, or it's word dogmatic, or like I've just been so dogmatically like this is what I do and this is what I want
mhm,
to do in this profession that I carved out this kind of niche, even though maybe most people outside of architecture wouldn't expect drawing to be a niche because they would assume that architects draw, but they don't really anymore in practice. And
yeah,
um, everybody is kind of copy pasta meant to do the same thing. So when I went into practices in London, it was the idea that if you continue to, or even in university to some extent, it's if you continue to draw, you're not going to get a job because you don't know how to use Rabbit, you don't know how to do this, you don't know how to do that. And it was the same thing in practice. But then I realized in practice, and to be fair to some of the places I worked, they let me do it and they encouraged me. But there were certain factions that were saying, if you don't do these things, you're never gonna get anywhere. But I
mm,
realized I'm the only person that does this, so you all
mm,
do the same thing, but I do
yeah,
this.
yeah,
And I had a, a sort of epiphany moment where I just decided to leave London and set up on my own because I realized I have a skill set that it just has become niche in the UK and Ireland, and then I realized then across the world that there's this little old school niche of how things used to be done, but that of course done in a modern way, and I'm doing it in a way that I'm trying to keep it relevant and
yep,
fresh, and not like something that is stock and fades away. And I do think there's like a real need to push that forward to keep that part of the profession because it was so intangibly linked or is that the word? Like, it's just it was
yeah, 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 yeah.
so
It's linked. Yeah,
um so
yeah,
you kind of want to be like a guardian of
your
that
skills.
of yeah
Yeah,
of the profession, and I'd like to think that I can see a world where like even in a few years where some practices proudly state we work with real people. That's going to
yeah.
probably be something that companies have to come out with and say. Whereas other company, like Disney worked one of the Marvel shows on Disney Plus. I think it was Secret Invasion. The the credits at the beginning were all AI art. So you're starting to see
Oh,
you know
interesting.
real
Mm,
world examples of massive companies taking huge shortcuts and taking away the jobs of people. And I think that's a lot of the things that a lot of the issues that happened last year with the various
yep,
strikes and writer strikes in Hollywood last year that put all the film industry into what it was for the year. But it's trying to future proof against these people taking
yep.
um, the piss. you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I had the same, I mean, the same thing happened in the ArtGriz community where, it's particularly, I live in New York and New York is like one of the most expensive cities. And we found that all these different ArcViz studios who have studios around the country or around the world just closed down their New York studio because we were the highest salaries to pay, and it was just cheaper to like hire people. Like we're getting the same quality or just a bit less, and that's fine in other places, because you have to set up that relationship. So there seemed to be this like race to like pay for the cheapest price for things, and like that didn't just come from greed. That also came from like a need to exist because things got expensive or work got low, whatever. And so it seemed to be this trickle down effect where artists, like, are you competing with everything that's cheaper than you? And that will, I think you're right. Like that mentality of not appreciating, um, people's work, like, and then you find other companies who like, no, I appreciate someone who's doing this work, and I have the money to pay them for it, and I want to pay them for it. And you think those are the ones like who hopefully will survive longer because there is more sustainable, I do have like one closing question for you, which I'd love to ask is, like, do you have any advice for someone graduating with an architecture degree who wants to get into the world of illustration today, let's say?
I think the main thing would be to like never think that doing an architecture degree doesn't mean you can be an illustrator, because it's a lot of the pushback I've had. It's it you know, it's like, I don't know, it's like anything. Like because I made the decision to do what I do in architecture. On one hand, you got to grip a lot of people being critical of you within the profession that you may have studied with or met along the way, who don't that they don't understand why you've taken a tangent path within the industry, so they don't accept it. They think that we all went through this rite of passage, and in the UK it's part one, two, three. And if you don't do
Mm.
that, you're out. You're out. You're not in the clique anymore. Um,
The
and
clique's no fun. You don't want to be part of that gang anyway.
yeah, the copy pasta sort of prograde. Like I don't, I think that, and the same thing in illustration. I found when I moved back to Belfast, I didn't, I'm working as an illustrator, albeit in architecture, but I'm not by any means accepted by the illustration community or the
I
local
see.
art scene in Belfast, because I didn't do illustration as a degree or whatever. But
Mhm.
so that I think it's, as you said earlier, like architecture to me is one of the best design uh, courses and that you could possibly take. You could go
Mhm.
anywhere. But the idea that you have to be an architect and just do part one, two, and three, and that's it. I just think that's nonsense, and it's so closed minded. You could be like, and especially when all these architects that people look up to in the UK and continually refer to, like Azara did. She did everything. Why are we thinking that you have to be this one thing?
Yeah.
You should be as open minded, and you could end up in fashion, you could end up in film, you could end up working um as a musician. Who knows? Like you could
Yeah.
do anything. There's way. I mean, if in another life, I always think I would love to be a chef, because I can see the parallels between cooking, and when you watch like Chef's Table, you realize this is an art form, and the way this is being presented to me is the same way I'm familiar with architecture being presented. It's all the
Yep.
the story, it's all the layers of information, and it's all the same kind of lingo. Like you're talking about memories, you're talking about place, you're talking about time. It's
Yep.
everything's related, and I just think that architecture is a great place to start. It's a really good broad jumping off um jumping off point. And uh, but I do think the way the education system in architecture is set up in the UK, it's a tough one, because people do come out of it thinking that it is one thing, which is a problem, I
Mhm.
think. Um, but I know as well from practice that, or in a lot of practices, that the sort of old school people who are in their 60s, who are kind of handing over the torch, they are also terrified by the fact that a lot of people come out of architecture school but actually don't have a clue how to make a make a building.
Right. Yeah.
Problem, because yeah, so I think definitely encourage people to be as open minded as possible, but also the fundamentals of what there's such a there's the architecture university in the UK is so much one thing. Like it's
Yeah.
very it's one thing, and it's your chance to be free and do all this cool stuff. But then when you go into practice, it's a totally different thing, and it's almost like you might as well have done dentistry, because it's you're expected to go from this kind of hopefully really creative place and like hub of studio culture and stuff into something that could potentially be completely constraining and horrible, and then it ends up being bad for the profession, because so many people do leave, and so many people are so downtrodden by it that they don't even have it. They can't even find their own way. They can't even. So that's my advice. Like if you want to
Yeah.
be like an illustrator or whatever it is, and you recognize that when you move into practice, then do it. Like, don't just think, oh, I'm a failure now because I don't want to go down that path that everyone else is going down. Like,
Yeah.
free yourself up and like find a way to make it work, whatever that
Yeah.
is. Like, because you've got an incredible education under your belt. Even if you
Yeah.
did do your part, I didn't do my part three, but it's not harmed me at all. But I think a lot of people, I know, like to think it has harmed me, but I can tell them it certainly hasn't, and I'm
Yeah.
glad I did my masters and my part two and stuff because I think I wasn't quite ready to know what I wanted and who I was within this profession. But I know now, and I'm confident with my decisions that I've made that have led to this point, and I'm excited about where it goes. And I like not knowing. I'd rather not know that I'm going to sit in the same office for 25 years and
Yeah.
this little ladder.
Well, I'm excited to see in 5 to 10 years how you mix Concrete Cloud's architectural illustration with cooking and food. I can't wait to see that that chapter. I think that's the way you should go. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast and your interview, and it's been great, Benji. And for anyone who wants to find Concrete Clouds, I'll put the website in the notes. But what's the website?
It's just www.concreteclouds.co.uk.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Definitely go and check them out. Check out Benji's artwork. And thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle. It's been amazing. Thank you.